Welcome to the 10K Club. So today we are joined by Justin, founder of Nah Brother, a faith-based and mental awareness brand, and he was just able to eclipse his first $10,000 month. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about kind of the journey to get there, some of the struggles that he had to power through to reach this milestone, and what we're aiming for next. So let's start with this, Justin. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what your brand is all about.
So Nah Brother is, like you said, it's a faith-based apparel brand that focuses on men's faith and men's mental health. You know, our goal after recognizing, I was going through a rough spot in my life, and rather than doing anything else, I decided to take that energy and turn it into something good. And I started looking into the statistics around men's mental health, like learning, 75% of all suicides are men, and a lot of it just comes from or stems from the fact that they won't ask for help. They won't see therapists. Majority of people that see therapists are women. So men tend to kind of hold it inside until one day it's just too much and they make a choice. And so I created Nah Brother, kind of bridge that gap. I wanted to create a brand that, people could recognize. You could walk down the street and, know that you see somebody wearing Nah Brother, they went through something, and they're still here, which means that you can too.
So being that you had a journey like this, how do you stay kind of authentic to your faith and the messaging for your brand without it feeling like preachy or salesy?
So great question. I kind of struggle with this all the time, right? You sit there and God calls us to be generous, right? So not so much about tithing, but just in giving. It's supposed to be a generous act. And, I have some mentors at the church that I go to now, and they helped me kind of understand, that Nah Brother was a God-given opportunity. And there's also this understanding that I can't, if I could do it all for free, I would. But for whatever reason, this opportunity was put before me, not only to help me financially meet my goals, pay my bills, things like that, but to also bring people together and bring awareness to this, and try to bring men, back to Christ, back in their faith, bring it back into the household, which, I believe a lot of problems would be solved if men started doing that. And so I still struggle with it from time to time. But at the end of the day, my goal, my mission stays the same. And that kind of helps stop me from falling into that doubt or that line of questioning.
Oh, that's awesome. Especially now that, you're actually starting to see the financial success that can come along with it. Staying true to your mission is going to be important. And it's also going to help you make even more money, because the more authentic that you are and the more that people understand that you care about them and you're doing it not just for the money, but for folks, it resonates and helps you make even more money.
I've had a few people reach out, call me out for being a scam. And the minute that I respond to them, they're like, oh my gosh, I thought this was a spam. I'll take my comments down, and then they end up writing me positive reviews, and they bought something just by being authentic.
Yes, no, it's can't stress enough how powerful it is when people feel like you're a real person, a real brand. They feel authenticity. That's the difference between folks that just randomly drop ship whatever from wherever country and are just trying to throw whatever they think that can sell in front of folks. They don't really care. They don't really care about the customer. They just care about a book. People can smell that. And that's why a lot of like the general store drop shippers really struggle, because they never cared about the people that they were selling stuff to. So when it comes to your products, are you using print on demand? Are you creating them? Are you pressing them? Tell us a little bit about your fulfillment process.
So when I started Nah Brother, we were all print on demand, because at that point, it was more the men's mental health. And I wanted to focus more on the outreach, and not really spend the time doing any of the printing. And I got saved. I got born again, baptized in February of 2025. I decided to bring Christ into Nah Brother. And when I decided to do that, I also decided that we were going to do everything in-house. And so since then, we've been ordering, sheets 30 feet at a time of just DTFs and all the images, and we press everything ourselves. And seeing after this first, because it was really only the last 2 weeks or so of February that pushed me into that 10K. And when I saw that happen, I decided, and it might have been a little premature, but we'll see. I went ahead and got a DTF printer. So because that was one of my most serious bottlenecks, was trying to order the prints ahead of time and get them to me so I can keep fulfilling orders. And I got backed up pretty bad just waiting on prints because I kept getting lost or delayed. And then two, having a printer on hand means I'll be able to come out with new apparel and be able to print the new image, take pictures, get the product out immediately instead of waiting to even see if it would sell, if people would like it, then ordering the DTFs and then trying to get the product out and ship to the customer. So having a printer will definitely remove a lot of bottlenecks. I just need to keep the sales up.
Right. And that's definitely one of the benefits of being able to handle fulfillment in-house versus print on demand. I tell folks print on demand is good when you're like testing different products out. The quality can be kind of hit or miss, but when you're in control of your quality, when you're in control of your shipping process, one, it's way more profitable, right? And then you have a lot more control. But the key is to be able to have the sales and consistency to fund all of that, right? And obviously now we're on the other side and we know what it's like to be able to kind of put our foot on the gas, and you can see, what you have control of. But it wasn't always like that. So talk to me a little bit about the type of struggles that you were running into before you joined the eCom sales.
So one, I had never put any money into ads. I'd never felt comfortable. I had looked at it before. And when I'd first launched Now Brother, I ran a couple ads and I was focused on engagement, trying to build my following, thinking that was going to bring me sales if I had followers. And Facebook found me followers and they didn't do much. I would post on a regular basis and I'd get, 6 likes and 100 views, and I had 4,000 followers. So my stuff was just kind of dead. I always knew that Now Brother had a future because my wife and I would go to like craft shows and vendor shows, and Now Brother always sold, right? And it was always the men. I've had grown men start crying in front of me, at these vendor shows. And so I needed to understand, was it my website? Was it, Facebook? And that's, I started seeing the eCom sales engine ads on Facebook, and it kept hitting me, and so then I decided to take the plunge and fill out the questionnaire to be contacted, and it just kind of went from there, and I'm definitely glad I did.
So sounds like when you were trying to run ads and get eyeballs, you were able to get clicks, you were able to get likes, followers, but sales weren't really coming from that.
Nothing. I've done more in sales in the last 21 days than I have in the last 18 months.
And a lot of folks watching this, and if you're watching this and running into it, let me know in the comments. But clicks but no conversions, traffic but no sales. Like that is, what is the value of a follower? You had 14,000 followers and no sales. So how valuable was something like that? And understanding how to take interest and turn it into desire and then action, that's where the real magic can happen. Now, when you were making this stuff, selling in person, but not really doing enough volume for it to be scalable, were you ever close to giving up?
All the time. It's funny that you asked that because, prior to February, getting baptized again, it was something, that I kept paying for. Shopify is not free. I was maintaining the email address and everything. It's not free. I created another business to kind of help pay the bills, doing handyman stuff around my town, and I kept funding it, because for whatever reason, I just could not build it up in myself to shut it down, and it was just something that was calling to me, like, you can do it. There were months, 6 months I went by, I didn't post a single thing on Facebook, and I was slowly watching, my Facebook followers kind of dwindle down, bot profiles being deleted or whatever the case may be, and I don't know, probably a couple times a month, I'd kind of talked to my wife about shutting it down, saving the money, and it wasn't until I made the decision to put Christ at the center of it that I was just like, no, we cannot give this up. This was built for this moment right here. And then it took me a couple months, because I was in February, and of course, handyman season's really busy during the summer, so that kind of plagued my ability, my time, and those resources. And it wasn't until the end of October that I think we really reached out to the eCom sales engine and really started looking at taking Nah Brothers seriously and seeing what we could do with it.
So, I think mid-November is I think when you guys got started, and then your first $10,000 month was February. That's a pretty short runway when you think about it in the grand scheme of things. There's folks that struggle for years and years watching YouTube videos, right? Getting scammed by random experts, or, letting agencies come and siphon away all their money, when sometimes you just want to be able to take the bull by the horns and be able to kind of take things to the next level. Tell me some of the things that before the eCom sales engine, you mentioned that you ran ads. What else were you doing to try to grow the online store?
There wasn't much. I mean, we looked at doing like ambassador programs, affiliate marketing, just trying to get influencers to help us out, and again, people sought the message, but I feel like at that time, especially back then, there was kind of a loss of authenticity. And to be honest, when you talk about men's mental health, it's such a taboo subject. It either has to be 100% authentic or not at all. And so even now, influencers and stuff like that doesn't really work for this brand. What works is, the guys that I've got now that are part of like, biker groups, and stuff like that, where one of them will buy something, and he's bought t-shirts and hoodies for me, and now he's got a patch for his motorcycle vest, and now the rest of the guys that he rides with, it's starting to come into that. I had one that wants me to take one of my products and kind of customize it for their biker group, make it the same colors as their biker group. And so, it only takes one, but the authenticity needs to be there. And, there are men out there that see this as a serious need. And then there's too many of them that are still kind of stuck in that mindset that it's just better to be quiet and, it'll eventually take care of itself, which sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. So it's been a walk, a journey for sure.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. As you mentioned, as men, we're conditioned to be alphas in nature, right? If you're not the alpha, an alpha is gonna come and take your pack, take your woman, take your whatever, and that can weigh on you, right? And especially folks that responders or veterans, or some of the folks that you really speak to in your designs, where they're carrying tremendous amount of baggage, tremendous amount of post-traumatic stress disorder. There's a lot of things that folks that have really seen some things carry and don't always express. And that's one of the things that stood out to me about your brand when you first joined the program, because there is a need for it, and men do need to understand that it's okay to be human. And by giving folks a good outlet, you can express yourself, you can feel better, but it doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your style while you do it, right? You can still look good and have a good message, right? So what was your biggest hesitation on joining a program like this?
Honestly, it was spending the money. As I mentioned, we weren't doing almost anything in sales. I was funding this out of pocket, the entire time without bringing anything in. And to join a program and, essentially take a leap of faith, put that money down in hopes that you'll get return. That's where I'm very cautious. I'm a pessimistic person. And so I tend not to trust a lot of people. I'm working on that, but that was the biggest thing, was just that leap of faith. I had faith in my brand. It's just whether or not I had to do it myself, or if it was okay for me to get help to do it, which that's what Nah Brothers all about anyways.
I was just thinking that, right, we put all this pressure on ourselves, all this pressure, but the reality is, especially in entrepreneurship, almost everyone, not just you, everyone watching this, almost everyone that you model, almost everyone that you look at that you would say is successful, whether it's in sports, business, almost anything, almost all of them had some sort of a guide. Jesus had disciples, right? And it's something that, we can turn our backs on in a lot of situations because we want to do things on our own or we're being price conscious, etc. But the amount of speed that can come from leaning on someone, that is priceless. I know what I paid my mentor. I've worked with multiple mentors and guides and coaches throughout my career, and my goodness, it's worked out. And now I'm able to pay it forward and help folks level up. And I hope that, maybe you even have the opportunity when you deal with someone, maybe they're going through something and you can be some sort of a guide or someone that can help them express and get from one point to the next, that much faster, whether it's a mental health journey or whether that is, finding their faith, and you can be someone as a model or someone that might just be going through something and they can look at your business success and you can say, you can help them understand, hey, listen, you can't let the mental hurdles, handicaps hold you back, right? I know what I went through. This is what allowed me to get here. Paying it forward is a powerful thing. And sometimes you do have to take that leap of faith. Most people that are where you want to be took a leap of faith at some point in time. So once you got inside the program, what are some of the things that stood out to you and made you feel like it was different than, things you were looking at?
So, the information that was available had me think about things from a different perspective than I had thought before. Again, with me being pessimistic, there's a lot of things that I kind of blow off. And I also had to come to a realization that I might be like my customer, from that mindset, but I am not my only customer. And so there was a lot of changes. I rebuilt the website from the ground up under the guidance of the eCom sales engine. We did, it was floor to ceiling renovation of the business, right? Website, Facebook and Instagram ads, email marketing, SMS marketing. It was just everything. It wasn't to say that everything I was doing was wrong, but there was a lot of tune-ups in a lot of different areas to get it to kind of even look legitimate enough to gain somebody's confidence for them to start purchasing and to start making sales.
So what would you say is your favorite part of the program?
I don't like ads. It takes up a lot. It takes up a lot of time. Honestly, I like messing with my website the most, but I'm a self-taught web page programmer. So trying to work with Beautify and Shopify was even then somewhat frustrating, but as I was able to kind of tweak some things, just from what I had learned previously. But trying to, the hardest thing for me, because I try not to be a perfectionist, but when you're making the graphics and the banner images, and it was frustrating for me because it just was never perfect enough. But that was more on me. That wasn't on the program. The program outlined everything I needed to do, and there were times where I would submit for review and it's like, it's still not good enough, and you guys would be like, good, keep going on to the next thing. I'm like, okay, if it's good enough for you, it's good enough, and I get almost nothing but good reviews back on my products, my website. And so that again was more of my own personality trying to feed perfection into the business when it didn't need it.
That's a good point that you make there. Is folks can get so caught up on perfection or the home run, the big swing, right? What's the big thing that needs to be done? If it's not the big swing, it's not valuable. And that can be one of the most toxic things for a business owner because it can set the wrong expectations and it can leave you in like implementation purgatory, or just like you can't get ahead because you want it to be the big swing, but you don't even really know what the big swing looks like. So then you get caught in the cycle. But in the reality of just online marketing is it's a game of percentages. That's something that we talked about earlier. You don't have to boost one thing by 100% or even 50%. In fact, if you can get 10% lift here, a 10% lift there, a 10% lift there, right? Like small but easy wins in multiple places, you can still hit a 50% lift. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to hit the home run. Let's just get on base and then get to the next
4
one.
bunts. 4 bunts gets points on the board.
That's right. There it is. And it doesn't take a lot. You just got to get in there and keep going, right? Get in there and keep going. Now, for folks, how do you decide like which phrase or which design that you want to put out there? Like, what is some of the motivation behind the designs that you choose?
Ooh. I've got now kind of a close group of guys that I respect. So when I come up with a new idea, I kind of run it by them and we discuss it. And if it's worth pushing, if it's good, if it's just an item to have in the store or something to not have at all, I kind of get my feedback from them, and then I take that feedback and we'll run a couple ads kind of in a small tight setting just to kind of see, because Meta's pretty quick about choosing where they want that money to go, or what they feel will do well. And sometimes you'll know within the first 24 to 72 hours, which one is your winner. It doesn't necessarily mean it will do well. It's just of the ads that you put out there, it will choose something for you. And sometimes you'll get, my winner was kind of out of left field. It wasn't something that I was really trying to promote. And, I had thrown a bunch of ads in thinking that, it was going to do okay. And I mean, it took off. A lot of engagement, even on the ads themselves. It's got like 2,000 likes and a lot of shares. And I'm even getting sales off of people sharing the ads to other people. So it's been great to see that happen. But now, again, try to take a step back. Not everything I have is going to do that. So rather than designing or trying to kill myself to design the next winner, I just keep pushing out good, fresh ideas, and I'll let the people decide what wins and what doesn't.
It's a good point there. And this is something that, we talk a lot about. It's an 80-20 game. 80% of the things that you do, especially in like design or apparel, like, design focused niches, you're going to make most of your money from like 20% of your stuff. You can do $10,000. 1 or 2 designs can get you there. Now, there'll be a lot of things along the way that, may not hit. But in this game, it's about letting your winners run and cutting your losses. And as you grow your list, as you grow your following, it's far easier to sell them more stuff. Like once someone's bought one thing, now we can sell them more. And it even goes back into the importance of having a niche or having a lane. Right? When you're just general store drop shipping, or when you're doing print on demand and you're just throwing any type of design out there, right? Just throwing stuff out there, then that's a dangerous game to play. Versus when you know who you're making something for, who you're trying to sell something. Sure, you can put different options out there, but if you have that person in mind, the likelihood of one of those designs going nuclear is so much higher. And your chances to be able to sell that person more stuff down the line that also scratches that same itch is so much higher. And that's where the money is made. You think about some of these people that have come in and maybe bought one thing from an ad, but then you can email them and watch them buy something else, right? And as you start to transition and you start pushing towards, $20,000, $50,000 months, you'll find that, acquisition is a constant. You're not going to stop doing acquisition, but how you work your customers, the type of things that we do to help get these people buying more and more frequently, that's where your money really starts to pile up, because now you don't have cost per purchases and things like that. And advertising and paid ads can be very scary if you have to only live off of acquisition ads, and you better triple your money on the ads, otherwise we're in a little bit of trouble. But if you can sell 1 out of every 5 customers something else, think about how much money that is.
Good point.
That's how this game is really played. So what would you say changed in your business the most since you joined this program?
That's a good question. what's changed the most in my business, the level of care that I've always given the business or the products, that's always been the same. But now that I do things in house, that to me kind of, like I said, brought more authenticity, given that, I'm a former United States Marine, father of four, everything that now brother talks about, I've been there, and this isn't, some big brand just trying to come up with the next big thing. Like I'm legitimately trying to help people. Now, I still try to balance, and even with working with the ecom sales engine, between trying to figure out ads and the creatives, the copy that goes with it, the next email that's going out on top of production after that. I would say, as far as what's changed in my business, I'm a lot busier now. It isn't just making t-shirts and shipping them out. It's not just running ads and then going to sit on the couch. It's definitely taking one hat off and putting on another and just keep moving through the stages day after day. And there's almost no time for sick days. I've been getting over a sickness over the last couple of days, and even when I'm sick, I'm still here trying to work, trying to get things done. But definitely an increase in customer service, just talking to people, that's definitely changed since I started working with this group, just because, now I'm collecting actual data about people. I'm getting their email addresses. I'm selling them product, right? This entire time up until I started working with the engine, the only people I sold to were at shows. If they had a question, anything like that, it was always face to face, and now that it's turning into a legitimate business, there's customer service that I've never really had to deal with before, you know, across all 50 states, because that's where we ship to. I'm dealing with shipping issues now that I never had to deal with before. It just definitely, like I said, I'm a lot busier, but it took the entire e-commerce platform and kind of gave it to me in a Christmas box and said, here, this is what you've been asking for. And I got exactly what I was asking for. It was still kind of a shock even to me, just how many different hats I would end up wearing as a solopreneur. But I look forward to the growth to when I can start hiring some help.
Call those first world problems. And that's why I structure things the way that I do, and I talk to you guys about things, because your first 10K feels magical, right? It's a major milestone, and especially for someone like yourself, the timing of it couldn't have come at a better time, right? But when you start going for like 20 and 50,000, things change, right? You get past, oh, does this work? Oh, how do I do this? How do I do that? How do I do this the right way? You shift from that to, okay, how can I balance doing this and this? How can I balance fulfillment with these other things that I have? How can I create more systems that can allow me to get more done in less time? How can I remove myself from this and put myself over there? $1 a month sounds amazing, right? When you think about what you do and what it will mean for your family. But if you don't know how things change when you're making 10 a month, how things change when you're making 20 a month, I guarantee you're not ready for 50. So every step, every milestone, there's always something new to build on. And, at least you're doing it for yourself versus somebody else.
I can tell you right now, I'm not ready for 50, ready for 20, but there's some systems that I want to put in place before we start scaling to that level. Like I said, getting the printer and things like that will definitely help reduce bottlenecks for me. And 20 is not that far away. It's 50. 50 will be a little stressful, but I'm ready for it. Well, I will be ready for it.
And then just think back to where you were at in like November, right? Before you even took the leap. Could you have imagined at that time that you'd be actually thinking about, man, what would life be like at $50,000? Like, well, $20,000 is within sniping range. Like, did you even imagine that it would be that close?
No. Well, I remember all the conversations we had. And of course, I signed up for the program right before Thanksgiving week. So here I had access to all the training and everything. And then everybody's away for holidays. So I'm like, man, I'm really just chomping at the bit to get going and get started on this. Even you kept telling me, like, slow down. This is definitely about the journey rather than the destination. Learning the fundamentals, the fundamentals about creating graphics for your webpage, the fundamentals of creating, product images, for the website. I mean, everything, builds on each other, whether you're working on your upsells and your bundles on your website to, how you obtain people's email addresses. I mean, it's all builds, and that's why I can honestly say right now where I'm at, I'm not ready for 50, because I know I remember when I was at 0 to being where I'm at now. My website and everything back then, the systems I had in place, I wouldn't be ready for 10,000 back then. But now my website's a lot more optimized. My products and the way that I do things are a lot more optimized. And that just comes from the fundamentals that I learned through the e-commerce sales.
And, not too long ago, you were watching interviews like this to decide, if you could trust someone like me or if this program made sense. You were watching things on YouTube, interviews with other folks. How does it feel to actually be the one in the interview now?
It's almost unreal. I'm never the guy that always, I'm always watching the YouTube videos. I'm never on them, right? And to think, even this milestone, this little bit of success that I've had, I know, this is just the first stepping stone, and so for anybody else watching this, the program might not move as fast as you want to, but it's all, if you look at it as building blocks, building your house, Lincoln Logs, I think is the analogy Mike used in several messages between the two of us, because I was always anxious trying to get moving. And if you treat rebuilding your business as Lincoln Logs, you will build a house and you will see success.
Good stuff, man. If there was someone sitting on the fence about whether to join a program like this or not, like you were at one point in time, what would you say to them?
I would say if you're in a spot where you're stuck, you think your website's good, but it could be better. You think your emails are good, but they could be better. Your ads are good, but they could be better. Join with Mike and the eCom sales engine. They'll go over everything. And again, it might not be as fast as you want it to be, but even, God answers prayers in his own time. You've got to learn the foundations and the building blocks of doing this the right way, so that every time you create an image, it's based on those building blocks. If you are at a spot where it could be better, let Mike show you how, because it will transform your business in ways you didn't think were possible.
Powerful stuff. I appreciate you sharing that Justin. And, when we have you back on here for your 20 or your 50K interview, I will be able to keep folks abreast of the journey. So where can people find your brand if they want to support you?
So we're on Facebook. I mean, you can search Nah Brother. Instagram, I think, is Nah Brother LLC. And of course, our website's nahbrother.com. Yeah, that's mine. And we're on TikTok too, but I'm not very active on TikTok. I wear enough hats. So that's not something I wear on the constant.
Okay. And then the last question would be, what would you say to an entrepreneur, a store owner that's out there and they're frustrated? They feel like they're not making progress. Maybe they're even considering giving up on their dream. What would you say to someone like that?
I'd say if you're at a point where you're thinking about giving up because it's just not working, this is one of those times where you need to realize you haven't tried everything yet. I was skeptical because I am a skeptical person, and I took a leap of faith. And this is one of those times where my prayers were answered. And if you need that kind of help to where you're honestly considering closing your business, I would say take a leap of faith first. It's not that long of a program, and to go from 0 to 10,000, 3 months roughly, and we didn't even, we were working on the foundational stuff, but we didn't start running ads until the end of January. So really I went from 0 to 10,000 in my first month. If you're that close, if you're that far beaten down that you're ready to close your business, take a few extra weeks, work with somebody like Mike and the eCom sales team, and they will turn it around for you.
Appreciate you saying that, Jay. Right. And, I encourage those of you guys watching this, whether on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, right? If someone in your life that walks around carrying a weight, internalizing things, right? Maybe they're a veteran, maybe they're a first responder, maybe they're an entrepreneur, like the duck swimming, but their legs are just furiously going underwater. Encourage them to check out his brand. Brother is, I'm a fan, not only am I, someone who's helped him, but I'm actually a fan of the meaning and the type of messaging. And I think you will be as well. So make sure you go check him out at nowbrother.com. All right. And I'll see the rest of you guys on your favorite platform. Y'all have a good one.